The council chamber floated in the void between stars, a massive structure built from materials that could withstand the heat of suns. Inside, representatives from 47 different species sat in a circle, their forms ranging from gas clouds to crystalline beings, to creatures that defied easy description. They had gathered for one purpose: to discuss the human problem. Counselor Vreth, a being whose skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns, spoke first. His voice carried the weight of 600 years of diplomatic service. We can no longer ignore what the humans represent. In just 2 centuries, they have spread to 73 systems. They reject every treaty we offer. They refuse to acknowledge the natural order of things. Another counselor, this one resembling a floating mass of roots and flowers, added her concern. They treat servant species as equals. They share technology freely. They question our authority at every turn. If we allow this to continue, the entire Dominion structure will collapse. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Dominion had maintained peace for 10,000 years through a simple principle. Every species had its place. The strong ruled, the weak served. The powerful made decisions. The powerless obeyed. This system had prevented wars, maintained order, and allowed civilization to flourish across the galaxy. Then humanity had arrived and rejected everything. Their latest ambassador is the worst yet, Vreth continued. He activated a holographic display. The image showed a young human female with dark hair and calm eyes. She looked painfully ordinary by galactic standards. No armor plating, no natural weapons, no size or strength to speak of. This is Jiwoo. She has spent the last year visiting independent colonies and minor species. Everywhere she goes, she plants seeds of rebellion. She tells them they deserve rights. She encourages them to demand representation. She undermines 10 millennia of stable governance. What intelligence has she gathered? Asked a counselor whose body was composed entirely of living metal. Everything, Vreth said grimly. She knows our fleet positions, our economic dependencies, our military capabilities. If she returns to Earth with this information, humanity will know exactly how to dismantle the Dominion piece by piece. The chamber fell silent. They all understood what this meant. Humanity was not just a nuisance. They were an existential threat to the entire galactic order. We need a solution that cannot be traced back to us, Vreth said. If we openly attack a human ambassador, Earth will retaliate. They have the industrial capacity to wage war across 100 fronts simultaneously. We cannot afford open conflict with them. Then what do you propose? Asked the crystalline counselor. Vreth's bioluminescent pattern shifted to a deep red. We hire the apex hunter. The name alone caused several counselors to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone in the galaxy knew about Taimin. He was a legend whispered in 1,000 languages. The assassin who never failed. The hunter who could track prey across star systems. The killer who had ended wars by eliminating key figures before battles could even begin. The Vraks will demand a high price, one counselor objected. We offer them what they have wanted for centuries, Vreth replied. Full sovereignty over their homeworld and a permanent seat on this council. In exchange, their apex hunter eliminates Ambassador Jiwoo. We make it look like an accident. Humanity grieves but has no one to blame. The problem disappears. After hours of debate, the vote was unanimous. The message was sent. 3 days later, Taimin stood in the private chambers of the Vrak's High Commander. The room was built for warriors, with weapons from 100 conquered worlds mounted on the walls. Taimin himself was a work of art and terror combined. Standing over 2 meters tall, his body was a blend of organic tissue and cybernetic enhancement. His eyes could see across multiple spectrums. His reflexes were faster than most species could even perceive. His mind had been trained in 1,200 different combat forms. For 300 years, he had been the perfect weapon. The High Commander, an ancient Vrax warrior covered in scars, regarded him with pride. The Dominion Council has given us an opportunity, a mission that will secure our people's future for generations. Taimin listened in silence as the commander explained the target, a human female, an ambassador, unarmed and unguarded in any meaningful way. The mission seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. This is beneath my skills, Taimin said flatly. Send any competent agent. Why waste my time? The commander's eyes narrowed. Because humanity is more dangerous than you understand. They defeated the Krell swarm using nothing but crude chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. They survived their own world despite having no natural defenses. They are unpredictable, adaptable, and absolutely refuse to accept their proper place in the galactic hierarchy. She is one unarmed female, Taemin countered. She is a human, the commander said. And humans are never as helpless as they appear. This is why we need you. Anyone else might underestimate her. You never underestimate prey. Taemin considered this. The commander was right about one thing. He had survived 3 centuries by treating every target as potentially lethal. Overconfidence killed hunters faster than any weapon. What are the mission parameters? He asked. Make it look like an accident. No one can know the Dominion was involved. She is currently on the neutral station Meridian 7, meeting with representatives from minor species. You have 2 weeks before she departs for Earth. After that, she will be too well protected to reach. The commander transmitted all intelligence on Jiwoo to Taemin's neural implant. Personnel files, movement patterns, known associates, security protocols, everything the Dominion had gathered during her year-long tour. Taemin absorbed the information in seconds. The target seemed to have no combat training, no bodyguards beyond standard diplomatic protection, no weapons. She moved through dangerous situations with a naivety that suggested either foolishness or ignorance of galactic realities. She will be easy to kill, Taemin concluded. Then you accept the contract? For the price of Vrak's sovereignty and a council seat? Yes, I accept. The commander smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Excellent. Bring us proof of her death, and our people will finally take their rightful place among the galaxy's rulers. Taemin departed within the hour. His ship was designed for one purpose, hunting. It had no weapons, no armor, no identification markers. It looked like a simple merchant vessel but could outrun military frigates and mask its energy signature from any scanner in the galaxy. As he set course for Meridian 7, Taemin reviewed the target file again. Jiwoo had visited 37 worlds in the past year. Everywhere she went, she met with the weak, the powerless, the species that served others. She offered them things no Dominion representative ever had: respect, partnership, technology sharing agreements that benefited both sides equally. It was madness. The weak existed to serve the strong. That was the natural order. That was how civilization functioned. What Jiwoo offered would lead to chaos. Taemin had ended the lives of emperors, warlords, and beings far more dangerous than one idealistic human. This would be perhaps the easiest contract of his long career. He had no way of knowing that this simple assassination would change everything he believed about the galaxy, about himself, and about what it meant to be truly strong. The apex hunter set course for his prey. Confident in his abilities and certain of his success, he was wrong about almost everything. Meridian 7 was a monument to neutral commerce and uneasy peace. The massive orbital station hung above a dead world, built by a consortium of species who wanted a place where trade could happen without the Dominion's heavy oversight. Here, representatives from hundreds of worlds conducted business both legal and otherwise. Security was minimal by design. Privacy was guaranteed. Questions were rarely asked. It was the perfect place for an assassination. Taemin arrived posing as a merchant from the Outer Rim. His false identity was flawless, backed by years of planted records and fabricated history. He rented a small shop in the lower commercial district and began his observation. The station's security systems were laughable to someone with his skills. Within 6 hours, he had access to every camera, every sensor, and every communication channel. Finding Jiwoo was effortless. She maintained a suite in the diplomatic quarter, but she rarely stayed there. Instead, she spent her days in the strangest places. She visited markets in the lower levels where servant species traded goods. She ate at cheap food stalls rather than expensive restaurants. She walked through maintenance corridors and industrial sections where most diplomats would never dare venture. For 3 days, Taemin watched and waited. He tracked her movements, learned her patterns, and identified dozens of opportunities for a clean kill. A fall from a maintenance walkway, contaminated food, a malfunction in her suite's life support. Any of these would work, but something made him hesitate. Jiwoo moved through Meridian 7 without fear. She walked alone through districts where violence was common and security was absent. She spoke with species that most Dominion representatives wouldn't even acknowledge. She smiled at station workers and thanked service staff in their own languages. And she was always always watching her surroundings with a calm awareness that didn't match her file. On the fourth day, Taemin observed something that made him reconsider his initial assessment. Ji-woo entered a bar in the lower commercial district, the kind of establishment where disputes were settled with weapons and bodies were removed through the waste disposal. She sat alone at the bar and ordered a drink. Taemin watched from across the room, his enhanced vision tracking every movement. A Kragoth merchant, a massive creature covered in thick scales, approached her. The Kragoth were known for their aggression and their habit of drugging wealthy targets before robbing them. The merchant struck up a conversation. Ji-woo responded politely but without interest. When her drink arrived, the merchant distracted her with a question while gesturing broadly. Taemin's enhanced vision caught the moment a powder dissolved into Ji-woo's glass. This was it. The Kragoth would drug her, rob her, and probably kill her when she couldn't pay the arbitrary debt he would claim she owed. Taemin wouldn't even need to act. The problem would solve itself. But then Ji-woo did something unexpected. While responding to the merchant's question, she casually switched their drinks. The movement was so smooth, so natural, that even Taemin almost missed it. The merchant didn't notice at all. The Kragoth drank deeply from his glass, still talking. Ji-woo sipped from hers and continued the conversation as if nothing had happened. 5 minutes later, the merchant began to sway. 10 minutes later, he collapsed face first onto the bar. Ji-woo calmly finished her drink, paid for both beverages, and left. She didn't call station security, didn't make a scene, simply walked out while the merchant snored loudly at the bar. Taemin followed her through the station corridors, maintaining perfect distance and cover. His instincts, honed over 3 centuries, were screaming at him. Something was wrong. The target file said Ji-woo had no combat training, no field experience, no survival skills beyond basic diplomatic protocols. That switch had been executed with professional precision. 2 days later, another incident occurred. Station security attempted to arrest Ji-woo in a public corridor. The charges were obviously false, likely paid for by someone who wanted her detained or deported. Bribery was common on Meridian 7, and security forces were known to be flexible about the law. Taemin watched from an upper walkway, expecting Ji-woo to either submit or call for help from Earth's embassy. Instead, she calmly asked to see the arrest warrant. When the security officer produced it, she pulled out a small data pad and began speaking. Officer Renth, you have accepted 17 bribes in the past month totaling 43,000 credits. Officer Voss, you have been selling confiscated contraband through a dealer in Sector 12. Officer Hammock, you falsified evidence in 9 cases leading to the imprisonment of innocent beings. The 3 officers stood frozen as Ji-woo continued. I have documented evidence of all of these crimes along with 63 other violations by members of the Meridian 7 security force. This evidence is currently stored in 3 separate secure locations. If anything happens to me, it will be automatically released to the station administrator, the Neutral Commerce Authority, and every major news network in this sector. She smiled pleasantly. Would you still like to arrest me on these obviously fabricated charges? The officers retreated quickly. Within an hour, 2 of them had been arrested by their own department. Ji-woo continued her day as if nothing had happened. Taemin ran analysis after analysis. How had a simple ambassador gathered that much intelligence on station security? When had she done it? She had been on Meridian 7 for less than 2 weeks, and she spent most of her time meeting with representatives from minor species. Unless she had been gathering intelligence the entire time, she appeared to be doing diplomatic work. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Ji-woo wasn't naive. She wasn't careless. Every place she went, every person she met, every seemingly random conversation was serving a purpose. She was doing exactly what the Dominion feared, learning everything, observing everything, and building a network of information that would let humanity understand the galaxy's true power structures. And she was doing it in plain sight, where everyone underestimated her because she was human and female and appeared harmless. Taemin decided to accelerate his timeline. There would be a diplomatic reception in 2 days. Representatives from 30 different species would attend. Ji-woo would be there. The reception hall was large with high ceilings and complex architecture. Perfect for infiltration, he spent a full day preparing. He studied the building's layout, identified 7 different entry points and planned 3 escape routes. He selected his weapon carefully, a molecular disruptor that would stop a heart without leaving any trace. It would look like natural causes. Humans were fragile. Everyone knew that. No one would question it. The night of the reception, Taemin entered through the maintenance shafts. His cybernetic enhancements allowed him to move in complete silence. He bypassed 16 different security systems, each one supposedly state-of-the-art. They were children's toys to someone with his experience. He positioned himself in the ventilation system above the reception hall. Through the grating, he had a perfect view of the entire room. Jiwoo stood near the center, speaking with a group of representatives from mining colonies. She wore a simple dress, no armor, no visible protection. She laughed at something one of the representatives said, completely at ease. Taemin assembled his weapon and took aim. Range 12 meters. Clear line of sight. No obstructions. Wind none. This was the easiest shot he had taken in decades. His finger moved to the trigger. Then Jiwoo turned her head slightly and looked directly at the ventilation grate where he was hidden. For just a moment their eyes met. She didn't react with fear or surprise. She simply held his gaze for 3 seconds, then returned to her conversation as if nothing had happened. It was impossible. The ventilation grate was designed to be one way. His position was completely concealed. There was no way she could have seen him, but she had looked directly at him. Taemin's finger hesitated on the trigger. In 300 years, he had never hesitated. Hesitation meant death for a hunter, but something about that calm, knowing look disturbed him in ways he couldn't explain. He was still trying to decide when something happened that changed everything. The child appeared from behind a serving table near the edge of the reception hall. Small, no more than 5 cycles old, with gray skin and large eyes that marked them as Theln. The Theln were a servant species, bred generations ago to perform labor that other species found beneath them. They had no rights, no representation, no value beyond their utility. This child shouldn't have been in the reception hall at all. This was a space reserved for important beings, for diplomats and representatives and those who mattered in the galactic order. Servant children belonged in the maintenance levels or the service corridors, out of sight and mind. Security noticed the child immediately. 2 large guards in full armor moved toward the small figure, their weapons powered but not yet drawn. The child froze in terror, understanding they had made a terrible mistake. Taemin watched through his scope, finger still on the trigger. This was not his concern. His target was Jiwoo, who stood 15 meters from the child. In 3 seconds, the guards would remove the child. In 5 seconds, he would have his clear shot again. This changed nothing. But then Jiwoo moved. She crossed the distance to the child faster than Taemin expected, positioning herself directly between the guards and the terrified Thelin. She didn't raise her voice. Didn't draw attention from the other guests. She simply knelt down to the child's level and began speaking in a soft tone. Through his enhanced hearing, Taemin caught every word. "Hey there," Jiwoo said gently. "Are you lost?" The child nodded, tears streaming down their face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was looking for my parent. They were working the service entrance and they didn't come back and I got scared and I didn't mean to come here. I'm sorry, please don't hurt me." The guards reached them. "Step aside, Ambassador. This creature has no business in this area. We will remove it." Jiwoo looked up at them. Her voice remained calm but carried a weight that made even the armored guards hesitate. "This child is looking for their parent. Has anyone checked the service corridors?" "That is not our concern," one guard replied. "Servant species are the responsibility of their owners. We maintain security for important guests only." "Then I'll look for the parent myself," Jiwoo said. She took the child's hand. "What's your parent's name?" "Mika," the child whispered. "Okay, let's go find Mika together." The guards moved to block her path. "You cannot leave the reception hall with station property." Something changed in Jiwoo's expression. The gentleness remained, but underneath it, Taemin detected steel. "This is a child, not property. Move aside. Ambassador, you are under diplomatic protection only within designated areas. If you leave this hall with that creature, we cannot guarantee your safety." "I don't recall asking for your guarantee," Jiwoo said. She stood, still holding the child's hand, and walked past the guards. They didn't stop her. Taemin should have taken the shot. Right then, as she moved toward the exit, he had perfect line of sight. The molecular disruptor would end her life before she took another step. Mission complete. Contract fulfilled. His finger refused to move. Instead, he found himself following through the ventilation system as Jiwoo led the child out of the reception hall and into the station service corridors. These were areas where diplomatic protection meant nothing, where violence was common, where an unarmed human would be an easy target for robbery or worse. She had to know this. Yet she walked calmly through the dimly lit corridors, speaking softly to the child, asking about Mika's work and when they had last been seen. 3 times during that walk, Taemin had clear shots. 3 times he didn't take them. He told himself he was being professional, thorough, waiting for the perfect moment when her death would look most natural. But that was a lie, and Taemin had never been good at lying to himself. The truth was something else entirely, something that disturbed him more than any enemy he had ever faced. Jiwoo was deliberately making herself vulnerable. Every position she took gave him perfect kill opportunities. She was choosing to risk her own life to help a being that the galaxy considered worthless. After nearly a kilometer of walking, they found Mika in a maintenance junction. The Theln worker was collapsed against a wall, breathing in ragged gasps. Chemical burns covered their hands and arms. The air smelled of industrial toxins. "Mom," the child cried, rushing forward. Jiwoo knelt beside Mika, examining the injuries with practiced efficiency. "Chemical exposure," she said quietly. "Probably from the coolant systems. This is a fatal dose without treatment." She pulled out a small medical kit from a pocket in her dress. Taemin watched as she injected Mika with something that made the Theln's breathing ease slightly. Then she activated her communication device. "This is Ambassador Jiwoo. I need emergency medical transport to Maintenance Junction 7 Alpha. Worker injured, critical condition." The response came back immediately. "Ambassador, our medical facilities do not treat servant species. Station policy. Please return to the diplomatic quarters. Then direct me to the nearest facility that will treat them. There are no such facilities on Meridian 7. Servant species are considered expendable labor. Their owners may purchase replacements from..." Jiwoo cut the communication. She looked at Mika, then at the child, then made a decision. "Okay, we're doing this the hard way." She lifted Mika over her shoulders in a rescue carry. The Theln wasn't large, but they were still significant weight for a human. Jiwoo staggered slightly, found her balance, and began walking. "Where are we going?" the child asked, walking beside her. "There's an independent clinic in Sector 9. They don't ask questions and they treat everyone. We just need to get there." Taemin followed through the ventilation system, his mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. Sector 9 was 3 kilometers away through some of the most dangerous parts of the station. Jiwoo was carrying an injured Thelon, accompanied by a child. With no protection and no backup, she was completely vulnerable. Any competent killer could end her right now, and she had to know this. The walk took 23 minutes. Taemin counted every second. Twice, groups of station thugs noticed her and started to approach, probably seeing an easy robbery target. Both times, Jiwoo met their eyes with such calm certainty that they backed away without understanding why. When they finally reached the clinic, a small facility run by a retired doctor from a species Taemin didn't recognize, Jiwoo paid for Mika's treatment with her own credits. Not Earth government funds, her personal money. The doctor looked at her with confusion. "Why would you do this? This is a Theln. They have no value." "They have value to their child," Jiwoo said simply. "That's enough." She stayed while the doctor worked, keeping the child calm and distracted. When Mika's condition stabilized, Jiwoo made sure they had enough credits for a week of recovery and follow-up treatment. Then she knelt beside the child one more time. "Your parent is going to be okay. The doctor will take good care of them. Do you understand?" The child nodded, then suddenly hugged Jiwoo tightly. "Thank you. No one has ever helped us before. Everyone says we don't matter." Jiwoo returned the hug gently. "You matter. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." Taemin watched this exchange from his position in the clinic's air circulation system. His weapon was still trained on Jiwoo's head. One shot, that's all it would take. She had given him dozens of opportunities, but something was breaking inside him. Some fundamental understanding of the universe that had guided him for 3 centuries was cracking like old ice. The strong ruled, the weak served. That was natural law. That was how civilization functioned. Power determined worth. Strength justified dominance. But Jiwoo had walked 3 kilometers through dangerous territory. carrying a being the galaxy considered worthless, risking her own life for someone who could offer her nothing in return. She had spent her own money, her own time, her own safety on a servant species that no one cared about. This wasn't weakness. This was something else. Something Taemin had no word for in any of the languages he knew. Jiwoo left the clinic and began the long walk back to the diplomatic quarter. Alone now in the dark hours of station night, she moved through corridors where her diplomatic immunity meant nothing. Taemin followed, his weapon ready, his mind in chaos. At one point, Jiwoo stopped walking. She stood in an empty corridor and spoke without turning around. "I know you're there, Taemin. I've known since the day I arrived on this station." The apex hunter, the being who had never been detected in 300 years of hunting, felt his blood run cold. Taemin's communication implant vibrated with an incoming message. He remained perfectly still in the ventilation shaft, weapon trained on Jiwoo's back as she stood in the empty corridor. The message was marked Priority Alpha, directly from the Vrak's High Commander. "The Dominion Council grows impatient. They suspect you are compromised. Kill the target immediately. Public execution if necessary. Blame her for initiating hostilities. Political fallout is acceptable. Failure is not. Respond within 1 hour to confirm compliance or we will send a replacement team." Taemin read the message 3 times. A replacement team meant the Dominion had lost faith in him. It meant other hunters were already en route. It meant that if he didn't act now, someone else would, and they wouldn't hesitate like he had. More importantly, it meant the Dominion was willing to risk open conflict with humanity. They were that afraid of what Jiwoo represented. Below him, Jiwoo still stood in the corridor, waiting. She hadn't moved since speaking his name aloud. Taemin made a decision. He dropped from the ventilation shaft, landing silently behind her. His weapon was aimed at the base of her skull. At this range, even if he missed the kill shot, the molecular disruptor would cause enough damage to be fatal. "Turn around slowly," he said. His voice was flat, professional, the tone of a hunter about to end prey. Jiwoo turned to face him. No fear showed in her expression, just that same calm awareness that had disturbed him from the beginning. She looked at the weapon pointed at her head, then at him. "You've been watching me for over a week," she said. "Why haven't you killed me yet?" "Professional thoroughness," Taemin replied. "I study every target completely before elimination." "That's not the truth. You've had 27 clear opportunities to kill me. I counted. I made sure you had them." The admission confirmed what Taemin had begun to suspect. "You've been testing me." "No, I've been showing you who I am." "There's a difference." Jiwoo gestured at a nearby observation deck. "Can we talk? I know you're under orders to kill me. I know your people promised you sovereignty and power in exchange, but I'd like 5 minutes of conversation before I die. Will you give me that?" Every instinct Taemin possessed screamed at him to shoot now, complete the mission and leave. But curiosity, that dangerous quality that had kept him alive for 3 centuries by making him question everything, made him nod. They walked to the observation deck together. It was a small platform jutting out from the station's hull, surrounded by transparent aluminum that offered a view of the stars beyond. The space was empty this time of night. No witnesses. Perfect for what had to happen next. Jiwoo stood at the window looking out at the endless dark. "Have you ever wondered why the Dominion is so afraid of humanity? You're expansionist, unpredictable. You refuse to accept your place in the natural order." "The natural order," Jiwoo repeated, her voice thoughtful. "That's what the Dominion calls it. The strong rule, the weak serve. Power determines worth. It's the same philosophy that every empire in human history used to justify their atrocities. Rome, Mongols, various colonial powers. They all believed they had the right to dominate because they had the strength to do it. Strength is the only universal law," Taemin said. "Everything else is sentiment." Jiwoo turned to face him. "Then why are you still talking to me instead of pulling that trigger? You're stronger than me. You're faster, better armed, more experienced. By the natural order, I should already be dead. What's stopping you?" Taemin's weapon didn't waver, but he had no answer. "You've spent 3 centuries killing for the Vraks," Jiwoo continued. "You're their greatest weapon, their apex achievement. But tell me, Taemin, what have you built in those 300 years? What have you created? What legacy will you leave besides a list of the dead?" I have served my people with honor. Have you? Or have you just been following orders because you've never been given a choice about what kind of person you want to be? The words hit harder than any weapon. Taemin's hand began to shake slightly. You know nothing about me. I know you were taken as a child and transformed into a weapon. I know the Virax enhanced your body and trained your mind and taught you that violence was the highest virtue. I know they've used you for 3 centuries and promised you nothing except more missions, more targets, more death. When have they ever asked what you wanted? I am Apex Hunter. That is what I am. No, Jiwoo said gently. That's what they made you. The question is, what do you want to be? Taemin's weapon was shaking noticeably now. 300 years of conditioning warred against thoughts he had never allowed himself to have. I am a killer. It is the only thing I know. You're a person who's been killing. That's different. You can choose to stop and do what? The Dominion will send others. You will die regardless of what I choose. At least if I complete the mission, my people gain their sovereignty. Will they? Jiwoo asked. Or will the Dominion just use them as they've used you?
Give them promises and then demand more service, more obedience, more blood?
Empires don't free their weapons. They just find new ways to use them. She took a step closer. The molecular disruptor was now less than a meter from her chest. Humanity doesn't measure worth by strength or power, Taemin. We measure it by what you choose to do with whatever you've been given. You're incredibly strong. You're skilled and intelligent and capable. Imagine what you could build instead of destroy. Imagine what you could protect instead of kill. This is manipulation, Taemin said, but his voice lacked conviction. No. This is an offer. You can shoot me right now. Complete your mission. Get your people their promised reward. Go back to being the apex hunter. Or you can choose something different. You can choose to be free. I don't know how to be free, Taemin admitted, and the words felt like they were being torn from somewhere deep inside him. Then let's learn together. Jiwoo held out her hand, not in surrender, not in submission. In partnership. In invitation to something Taemin had never experienced in his long, violent life. The weapon fell from his hand and clattered on the deck. The sound echoed in the small observation space like the breaking of chains. Taemin, the apex hunter, the being who had ended thousands of lives across hundreds of worlds, dropped to one knee before this small, unarmed human who should have been the easiest kill of his career. I don't know who I am, he said. His voice broke. I don't know what I am without the mission. Jiwoo's hand touched his shoulder gently. You're someone who just made the hardest choice of his life. You chose yourself over your orders. That's more than most beings ever manage. The Dominion will send others. I know, they will kill you. They will destroy your people. They'll try, Jiwoo said. But they're about to learn what makes humanity really dangerous. It's not our technology or our military. It's our absolute belief that anyone, no matter where they come from or what they've done, can choose to be better. That belief is contagious, Taemin. You just caught it. Behind them, the observation deck doors exploded inward. Taemin's combat instincts activated instantly. He recognized the tactical gear and weapons. Dominion Special Forces, likely the replacement team the High Commander had mentioned. There were 6 of them, all heavily armed, all trained to kill. They had come expecting to find Jiwoo's body and a successful apex hunter. Instead, they found their target very much alive and their hunter kneeling before her. The team leader's voice crackled through his helmet speaker.
Taemin of Vrax, you are compromised.
Step away from the target. Taemin rose slowly. He had no weapon. No armor, no backup. These 6 were trained killers, perhaps not as skilled as him, but armed with enough firepower to level the entire observation deck. He stepped in front of Jiwoo. That's an interesting choice, the team leader said. Last chance. Move aside or die with her. Taemin spread his hands, his body language shifting into a combat stance despite having no weapon. Behind him, Jiwoo stood calm and ready. Well, she said quietly, I guess we're doing this together. I have no weapon, Taemin pointed out, then we'll have to improvise. That's what humans do best. The team leader raised his weapon, terminating both targets. What happened next would become legend across the galaxy. The first shot came from the team leader's plasma rifle, aimed directly at Taemin's chest. The apex hunter moved before the trigger was fully pulled, his 3 centuries of experience reading the micro-movements that preceded attack. He twisted sideways, the plasma bolt passing close enough that he felt its heat. His hand shot out and grabbed the observation deck's emergency oxygen tank mounted on the wall. In one fluid motion, he ripped it free and threw it at the team leader. The tank struck the rifle, deflecting the next shot into the ceiling. But there were 5 other weapons firing. Jiwoo dropped flat as energy bolts seared the air where she had been standing. She rolled behind a support pillar, pulling a small device from her dress pocket. Taemin recognized it immediately. A standard diplomatic emergency beacon. She wasn't calling for help. She was doing something else entirely. The beacon emitted a high-frequency pulse. Every electronic system in the observation deck went dark for 3 seconds. Lights, weapons, armor systems. All of it crashed simultaneously. "You brought an EMP generator to a diplomatic reception?" Taemin asked, impressed despite their situation. "I brought it everywhere," Jiwoo replied. "Humans learned a long time ago that being prepared is better than being sorry." 3 seconds wasn't much, but for someone like Taemin, it was enough. He closed the distance to the nearest soldier in complete darkness, his enhanced vision seeing clearly while the soldiers were blind. His strike was precise, hitting nerve clusters that shut down the soldier's motor functions without killing him. The lights flickered back on. 5 soldiers remained, and they had learned to be cautious. They spread out in a tactical formation, creating crossfire patterns that would make approach nearly impossible. Ambassador Jiwoo, the team leader, called out, "Surrender now. You cannot escape. Your EMP trick won't work twice. We've hardened our systems." "I'm not trying to escape," Jiwoo said calmly. She stepped out from behind the pillar, hands raised. "I'm trying to buy time." "Time for what?" "For you to think about what you're doing." The team leader laughed, the sound harsh through his helmet speaker. "We're following orders. We're completing a mission. This is our purpose." That's what he thought too, Jiwoo gestured at Taemin. "The apex hunter. The greatest assassin in the galaxy. He was supposed to kill me. Instead, he made a different choice. Do you know why? Because he's weak, compromised, no longer fit for service. Because he's free," Jiwoo corrected. "For the first time in 300 years, he chose what he wanted to do instead of what he was ordered to do." "You all have the same choice right now." One of the soldiers shifted uncomfortably. "We serve the Dominion. We maintain order. You serve beings who see you as tools, not people. They'll use you until you break, then replace you with the next generation of weapons. Is that really all you want from your lives?" "Enough philosophy," the team leader snapped. "Kill them both, now." But there was hesitation. Just a fraction of a second, but Taemin saw it in their body language. Jiwoo's words had planted doubt. That doubt was enough. Taemin moved. Not to attack, but to position himself between the soldiers and Jiwoo once again. "I was like you once," he said. "I believed in the mission, in the order, in the idea that following orders was the same as having purpose. But it's not. Purpose is something you choose for yourself." "Last warning," the team leader said, but his weapon wasn't quite as steady. Then the observation deck doors opened again. This time what came through wasn't more soldiers. It was people. Dozens of them. Thelen workers, minor species representatives, service staff, the beings that Jiwoo had helped during her time on Meridian 7. They filled the corridor outside, unarmed but present. Mika, the Thelen worker who Jiwoo had saved, stood at the front with their child. "You will not harm her," Mika said. Their voice was weak but determined. "She helped us when no one else would. We stand with her." "We all do," said another voice. More beings stepped forward. A Kragoth merchant Jiwoo had once helped with a corrupt contract. A station worker she had defended from abusive employers. A refugee she had given credits to when they had nothing. The team leader looked at the crowd, then at his soldiers, then at Jiwoo. "This changes nothing. These beings don't matter. They have no power. They matter to me," Jiwoo said. "And that's what you don't understand. The Dominion thinks power comes from ships and weapons and soldiers. But real power comes from connection, from trust, from choosing to help others even when you gain nothing from it." She looked directly at the team leader. "You can kill me. Maybe you can kill Taemin, but you'll have to do it in front of all these witnesses. And they'll tell the story. How the Dominion murdered an unarmed ambassador who was helping the powerless. How they killed someone who showed mercy and compassion. That story will spread to every colony, every minor species, every being who's ever questioned whether the Dominion really cares about them. Stories don't matter," the team leader said. "Stories are the only thing that matters." Taemin said quietly. He had lived 3 centuries and had never understood this until now. I am proof. The story of the apex hunter who never failed kept my enemies afraid and my employers confident. But that story also trapped me, made me believe I could only be one thing. He looked at Jiwoo. She showed me a different story was possible. One of the soldiers lowered his weapon. Then another. The team leader looked at his squad, seeing the doubt spreading like a virus. What are you doing? He demanded. Making a choice, one soldier said. She removed her helmet, revealing a young face marked with combat scars. I joined to protect people. When did that turn into just following orders to kill? The team leader's weapon swung toward his own soldier. You're all compromised. All of you. When we return, you'll be court-martialed and executed. Then we're not returning, the soldier said. It happened quickly after that. The team leader fired, but his own squad members blocked the shot. They disarmed him efficiently, no more violent than necessary. Within 30 seconds, the situation had completely reversed. Jiwoo walked over to the team leader, now restrained by his former soldiers. I'm not your enemy, she said. The Dominion is. They've been using all of you, lying to you, telling you that service was the same as purpose. But you can choose differently now. All of you. The team leader said nothing, but something in his eyes suggested he understood. Station security arrived minutes later, drawn by reports of weapons fire. They found an odd scene. Dominion soldiers surrendering peacefully, a crowd of minor species protecting a human ambassador, and the legendary apex hunter standing guard over them all. The political fallout was immediate and massive. News of Taemin's defection spread across the galaxy within hours. The apex hunter, the Dominion's most trusted weapon, had not only refused to kill his target, but had defended her against his own employers. The Vrak's high commander sent 17 messages demanding explanation. Taemin deleted them all. Within a week, 3 minor species formally requested to meet with human representatives. They wanted to know more about this species that valued mercy over power, that helped the weak without demanding servitude, that believed in choice over obedience. Within a month, the Dominion Council convened another emergency session. This time they weren't discussing how to eliminate humanity. They were discussing how to respond to the fact that 17 species had formally petitioned to leave the Dominion and join a new coalition being formed around human principles. Jiwoo returned to Earth not as a failed ambassador, but as the architect of something unprecedented, a voluntary alliance based on mutual benefit rather than forced hierarchy. Taemin went with her. Earth granted him full citizenship, not as a refugee or a servant, but as an equal. For the first time in 300 years, he had no mission, no orders, no purpose beyond what he chose for himself. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. On his first night on Earth, Taemin stood in Jiwoo's apartment looking out at a city filled with lights and life. What do I do now? He asked. Whatever you want, Jiwoo said. You're free. Maybe you teach others to fight, but to protect rather than kill. Maybe you explore philosophy or art or science. Maybe you just rest for a while and figure out who you are without the mission. The point is, it's your choice. The Dominion will come eventually. They won't accept this. Let them come. They'll find out what happens when you try to conquer a species that believes everyone deserves freedom. We've been preparing for this fight for generations, but we won't fight alone. All those species you saw in Meridian 7, they're not looking for new masters. They're looking for partners. That's humanity's real weapon. Taemin thought about this, about the Theln worker and her child, about the soldiers who chose to lower their weapons, about every being who had watched him kneel before Jiwoo instead of killing her. You're contagious, he said finally. What? This belief of yours, that anyone can choose to be better? I caught it. Those soldiers caught it. Soon others will too. The Dominion thinks it's fighting a war against human military power, but it's actually fighting against an idea, and ideas are much harder to kill than people. Jiwoo smiled. Welcome to humanity, Taemin. Not the species, the concept. It's not about where you're from or what you look like. It's about believing that everyone deserves dignity, freedom, and the chance to